We live in a world that glorifies speed. Everywhere you look, people are rushing, striving, pushing, as if life were some kind of race, where the one who struggles the hardest wins the prize. We've been told since childhood that if we just work harder, grind longer, and force our will strong enough, the universe will eventually bend to our demands. But have you noticed something? The harder you chase, the further away what you want seems to drift. Like trying to clutch at water with a closed fist. The very act of grasping makes it slip through your fingers. The truth is, in the quantum world, the rules are not the same as the rules of the marketplace or the rules of competition. The universe doesn't respond to desperation, to checklists, or to complicated rituals repeated night after night. It doesn't care how many affirmations you chant if your inner world is vibrating the opposite signal. What the field responds to, always, without fail, is the frequency you radiate from within. That is the language of creation. And yet, this truth feels almost too simple for most of us to accept. We've been programmed to believe that value comes only through suffering, that growth requires constant struggle, and that success demands sacrifice on the edge of exhaustion. Simplicity feels suspicious. Stillness feels unproductive. Allowing feels like laziness. But in reality, these very qualities, the ones we resist, are the doorway to what we've been searching for all along. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm lake at dawn. The water is perfectly still, mirroring the sky so flawlessly that you can't tell where heaven ends and earth begins. Now imagine tossing in stone after stone, trying to force the lake to show you the reflection you want. All you create are ripples, distortions, chaos on the surface. The reflection you long to see was already there in the stillness, waiting for you to stop disturbing it. This is how the quantum field works. It is a mirror, and it shows back not what you demand, but what you are being. So many of us chase after wealth while carrying the heavy vibration of scarcity. We seek love while radiating loneliness. We call for freedom, while our bodies and voices are tight with fear. The universe doesn't hear the words, it reads the signal, and the signal is always stronger than the story we tell. This is why manifestation feels impossible for so many people, not because it is difficult, but because they are broadcasting one song while trying to dance to another. Think about tuning a radio. If the station you want is playing on 100.3, but your dial is stuck on 92.5, no amount of wishing, pleading, or effort will bring that music through the speakers. You must first turn the dial. You must align yourself with the frequency. That is the whole principle of quantum manifestation. Not begging life to change, but aligning with the reality that is already playing on a different channel. And here's where the real freedom lies. The life you desire isn't somewhere far away, locked in the future, waiting for you to earn it. It already exists. Right now, in the field of infinite possibilities, your role is not to chase after it, but to allow your being to harmonize with it, to embody it. Here, in this moment, that is when the field awakens to you. That is when life reflects your truest signal. You see, manifestation isn't about forcing reality into your shape. It is about becoming the shape that reality can effortlessly mirror. The moment you stop running and start aligning, everything changes. The truth is simple, but it is not easy for the ego to accept, because the ego wants to struggle, to prove, to earn. But your soul, your deeper self, knows better. It knows that what is yours will meet you, not in the chase, but in the stillness of alignment. Not asking, but becoming there. Comes a moment in life when you realize that asking, pleading, and hoping have carried you as far as they can. You've prayed. You've written your affirmations. You've made your lists of goals, and yet something still feels missing. It isn't because you are unworthy. It isn't because the universe has ignored you. It is because life does not hand out dreams like prizes. to the loudest voice or the most desperate heart. What life does, what the quantum field does, is mirror who you are being, not what you are asking for, not what you are wishing for, but the state you embody in this very moment. Think of it like a mirror in your home. If you stand in front of it and frown, the reflection will not smile back. If you wear the clothes of sorrow, the mirror will not dress you in joy. The reflection has no choice but to echo what it sees. And so it is, with the field of infinite possibility. It does not respond to your words. It responds to your frequency, your presence, the truth of how you carry yourself in body and soul. I say this gently, because I know how painful it can be to realize. I have been there myself, standing in the shadows of lack, begging for a light to appear. And the harder I begged, the darker the night seemed to become. It wasn't until I stopped asking and began to shift into a new way of being that the dawn broke through. You see, asking keeps you in the posture of waiting. Asking says, I do not yet have it. I am still separate from it. I am still incomplete. And the field, like a faithful servant, mirrors that state of incompletion back to you. Becoming, on the other hand, says, it is already mine. I carry it within me. I am the one who has arrived, and life, unable to do otherwise, reflects the fullness of that knowing. It may sound strange at first. How can I become what I do not yet see? But think about how many times in your life you have done this without realizing. When you were younger and in love, did you not walk differently? Did you not speak with a certain glow? Even before anyone else noticed, that was you embodying the state of love. And the world responded in kind. Or think of a time when you felt deeply grateful. Didn't your day unfold with a softness, as if life itself leaned closer to care for you? You were broadcasting gratitude, and gratitude came running back. This is the secret that sages and mystics have whispered for centuries. You cannot beg your way into a new reality. You must inhabit it, even if just for a moment, even if quietly within yourself. You must wear the vibration of the life you desire, as if it were already your second skin. Does that mean pretending? No. Pretending carries the weight of doubt. Pretending says, I am playing a role until the real thing arrives. Becoming, however, is different. Becoming is remembering that in some corner of the infinite field, you already are that version of yourself. The wealth is already there. The love is already there. The peace is already there. You are not fabricating it. You are stepping into it. When I understood this, something softened in me. I no longer felt the need to convince God or the universe to grant me mercy. I realized that the universe was waiting all along for me to align, to settle into the truth of my being. And when I did, doors opened that I could never have forced open with my hands. The right people appeared. The right words found me. Opportunities arrived without fanfare, quietly, but perfectly timed. So if you find yourself exhausted from asking, I want you to know this. The asking phase is not your failure. It was a doorway. It brought you here, to the threshold of becoming, and now you are invited to walk through, not with begging, but with being, not with effort, but with alignment. Start small. When you wake in the morning, instead of thinking, I hope today brings me peace, close your eyes and feel what peace would feel like if it were already yours. Let it soak into your breath, into the way you sip your coffee, into the way you greet the day. Watch as life begins to echo that peace back to you. This is not magic in the sense of tricks and illusions. It is magic in the sense of truth so simple that it almost feels hidden. You are not rewarded for asking the loudest. You are recognized for becoming the clearest version of who you already are. And when you do, the field cannot help but mirror you back to yourself. That is why, in the end, manifestation is not about asking at all. It is about remembering. It is about stepping into the reflection you wish to see. So the universe can say, yes, I see you now. You are finally here. 2. Simplicity makes the ego resist. There is a quiet truth that often goes unnoticed. Life is simple, but the mind is not. We have been conditioned, generation after generation, to believe that only through hardship do we become worthy. Somewhere deep inside, many of us carry this belief that if something comes easily, it cannot be real. It cannot be valuable. We associate struggle with proof, with validation, with meaning. And so, when simplicity comes knocking at our door, the ego steps in and says, "This is too easy. It cannot be true. I know this well. There was a time when my own life was built around complication. The more elaborate the plan, the more difficult the journey, the more I believed I was doing something important. I confused exhaustion with progress, and pain with transformation. But the quantum field, the living intelligence that surrounds us, does not operate by the rules of ego. It does not measure worth by sweat or suffering. It responds only to the clarity of your vibration. And here lies the paradox. The more we resist simplicity, the further we drift from the very power we are seeking. The ego thrives on struggle, because struggle keeps it alive. The ego loves obstacles because obstacles give it stories to tell. But your soul, your essence, longs for peace, for alignment, for ease. When you allow things to be simple, you return to the rhythm of the soul. Think about breathing. It is the most essential act of your life, and yet you do not earn it through effort. You do not fight for each breath as if it were a trophy. It comes naturally, rhythmically, freely. This is how the universe intended creation to flow. Simplicity is not a weakness. It is the original design, but the ego cannot trust it, because the ego is addicted to proving itself. In the realm of manifestation, this becomes clear. People will spend years layering rituals, technique, complicated steps, hoping that the complexity will finally bring results. They write lists, chanfrases, build vision boards, chase synchronicities, yet their hearts are still restless. Why? Because deep down, they have not learned to trust the simplicity of being. They are still trying to do their way into alignment instead of being their way into it. And here is what the ego fears most when you surrender to simplicity. The ego loses its grip, because there is nothing left to prove. When you realize that abundance can arise in the quiet act of feeling gratitude, or that love can flow into your life when you soften into worthiness, the ego has no battle to fight. Simplicity disarms it. I remember sitting once in silence, tired of chasing, tired of performing all the right steps. For the first time, I allowed myself just to be. No ritual, no demand, no bargain with the universe. Just breathing, just sitting in the gentle awareness of existence itself. And in that stillness, I felt a presence stronger than any mantra I had ever spoken. I realized then the miracle does not arrive through struggle. It arrives when you make space for it. When you are willing to accept that life was never as complicated as the ego made it seem. But notice how the ego reacts when things begin to flow easily. It whispers, "This cannot last. You didn't work hard enough for this. It will be taken away." And if we listen, we unconsciously sabotage the gift. We add unnecessary tension. We second guess. We create drama where none is needed. Just to satisfy the ego's belief that struggle is necessary, here's the truth. In the quantum field, resistance does not prove your strength. It only confirms your lack. Every time you resist what is simple, you are declaring to the universe, "I do not trust this. I believe things must be hard for me." And the universe, always faithful, reflects back the hardship. But when you allow, when you embrace the simplicity of being, the universe reflects ease. Think of water flowing down a mountain. It does not force itself uphill to prove its worth. It follows the path of least resistance. And in doing so, it carves valleys, nourishes forests, and shapes the land itself. Simplicity is not powerless. It is the most natural force of transformation. So the question is, can you trust what is simple? Can you believe that something as gentle as joy, as quiet as gratitude, as subtle as presence, can shift your reality more deeply than years of struggle? That is the invitation of quantum manifestation. Not to add more steps, not to complicate the process, but to return to the essence, what you are being. The ego will resist. Yes, it will shout that you must earn every blessing. But listen deeper, past the noise. There, in the silence beneath, your soul is whispering, it was always this simple. You were always enough. You only needed to stop fighting and allow. 3. The principle of choosing reality. One of the most liberating truths I have come to know is this: nothing is missing. Every possibility you can imagine, wealth, love, healing, freedom, already exists in the vastness of the quantum field. We spend so much of our lives believing we must create these things from scratch, as if we are craftsmen, carving something out of hard stone. But reality is not built in that way. Reality is tuned into, much like a radio. Imagine sitting in a room with a radio beside you. Thousands of songs are being broadcast through the air at this very moment. You cannot hear them all at once, but they are there. Each one carried on its own frequency. If you turn the dial to one station, you might hear classical music. Turn it again, and you might find jazz or rock. The music didn't begin the moment you found it. It was already playing. What changed was your ability to receive it. This is the essence of manifestation. You are not creating love where none exists, or wealth where there was emptiness. You are aligning yourself with the frequency of the reality where love is already alive, where abundance is already flowing. It is not about forcing something into existence. It is about choosing which version of existence you will tune into. Now, I know the mind often resists this. The ego says, if it already exists, why can't I see it? But think again of the radio. If you are tuned to 92.5, you cannot demand to hear 100.3. You cannot beg the station to come to you. You must turn the dial. The song is there, waiting, but you have to meet it at its frequency. And so it is with life. If your thoughts and feelings are vibrating at the frequency of lack, you cannot receive the station of abundance, no matter how much you say you want it. If you live in the vibration of fear, the channel of love remains inaudible, not because it doesn't exist, but because you have not yet chosen it. The beauty of this truth is that choice is always available. You are never cut off from abundance, never barred from peace, never exiled from love. The door is not locked. The music has never stopped playing. All that is required is a shift in your inner tuning. And this is not about pretending. It's not about saying empty words while your heart still trembles with doubt. It is about gently teaching yourself to feel the tone of the reality you long for, until it becomes familiar. If you desire love, begin to carry yourself as someone who is loved. Let your gesture soften. Let your voice warm. Let your heart open as though love were already surrounding you. Because in truth, it is. If you long for abundance, practice the energy of gratitude and generosity. Now, not someday. You are not fooling the universe. You are aligning with what already exists. I remember a season in my own life when I was consumed by fear of not having enough. Every thought was about survival. Every action colored by anxiety. And yet, I was asking for abundance. I couldn't understand why it never arrived. Only later did I realize I wasn't choosing abundance. I was choosing fear, over and over, like a radio stuck on the same station. The moment I began to choose differently, to embody gratitude, even when my pockets were light, to breathe peace, even when bills pressed in, something shifted, slowly at first. Then, unmistakably, the station of abundance grew louder, clearer, undeniable. The power of this principle lies in its simplicity. You do not have to fight for a reality. You only have to choose it. Not once, not as a moment of wishful thinking, but as a way of being, day after day, moment by moment. You turn the dial of your consciousness, and with each turn, you move closer to the station where your desired life is already playing. This is why Neville Goddard would say, live in the end, not because you are tricking yourself, but because the end already exists. You are stepping into the timeline where it is real. And when you do, the field cannot help but reflect it back to you. So I ask you gently, which reality are you choosing today? The one of scarcity, or the one of abundance? The one of fear, or the one of love? The song is already playing. All that remains is for you to turn the dial. 4. The power of collective resonance. There is something profoundly moving about the moment when hearts beat together. When individuals, each carrying their private struggles, their private hopes, come into a space where consciousness aligns. In that space, something greater begins to stir. It's as if the air itself thickens with possibility, and the ordinary becomes sacred. This is what I mean when I speak of collective resonance. On our own, each of us carries a frequency. We radiate a signal born of our thoughts, our emotions, our state of being. But when those signals converge, when many people step into coherence together, the field responds in a way that feels almost miraculous. The impact multiplies. What you affirm in such a moment does not just strengthen your own path, it creates a pathway for others to walk upon. Ancient cultures understood this long before science caught up. They gathered in circles to sing, to pray, to chant, to dance. These were not just rituals for entertainment or tradition. They were acts of alignment. By moving, breathing, and sounding together, the whole communities could shift their collective frequency, calling forth rain for their crops, healing for the sick, or peace for their tribe. The resonance of the group was the prayer. Even now, we see glimpses of this. Have you ever been in a church, a meditation hall, or even a concert where the whole crowd seemed to exhale as one? In those moments, your body softens, your breath slows, and you feel a wave pass through you that did not originate from you alone. That is collective resonance. That is the field being shaped by many aligned frequencies woven into one. Modern science has begun to name this phenomenon morphic resonance, coherent intention, collective consciousness. The words vary, but the truth is simple. When enough people choose to align, it becomes easier for everyone else to access that same state. It's like someone carving a trail through the forest. At first, the way is difficult, full of branches and obstacles, but once the path is made, others can walk it with ease. Collective resonance is the universe's way of paving new paths of possibility. I have felt this in my own life. I remember sitting in a meditation group where, for the first 10 minutes, my mind was restless. Thoughts churned, my body fidgeted, and peace felt far away. But then something shifted. The group began to settle into a shared silence, and I felt myself being carried into that stillness, almost against my own resistance. Alone, I could not have reached it, but together, we created a current strong enough to draw me in. That is the gift of community. It reminds us of what is possible when we can't hold the frequency alone. This is why what you affirm, what you embody, is never just for you. Each time you align with love instead of fear, gratitude instead of lack, peace instead of chaos, you are not only shaping your own life, you are adding that vibration to the collective field. You become a tuning fork, and others who come near you find themselves drawn into resonance without even knowing why. And perhaps this is one of the deepest forms of service we can offer: to live in coherence, to embody the reality of abundance, healing, and compassion, not just for our own joy, but because every alignment ripples outward, You may never know whose life was softened because you chose peace today. You may never see the faces of those who found courage because you radiated hope, but the field records it all. Nothing is wasted. So when you hear people chanting together, or you find yourself in a circle of prayer, remember, it is not just tradition. It is science. It is energy. It is the human spirit remembering that we are stronger, not when we strive alone, but when we resonate together. And if you doubt this, try a simple experiment. The next time you feel heavy, join a group that meditates, sings, or prays. Notice how your body responds. Notice how the burden lightens, how the air feels different, how your own heart begins to beat in rhythm with the whole. That is the quantum field responding. Magnified by the collective, the ego loves to believe that the journey is solitary, that we must fight alone for what we desire. But the truth is far kinder. We are meant to lift one another. We are meant to resonate, to amplify, to become together what we struggle to sustain alone. That is the gift of collective resonance. It is not about losing yourself in the group. It is about remembering that you were never separate to begin with. 5. The biological shift of emotions. There is a truth about the body that many of us overlook. Every thought and every emotion leaves a trace. Not just in the mind, but in the very cells of who we are. We often imagine that gratitude, joy, or fear are just feelings that live in some invisible space. But the truth is, the body listens, the body responds. Each state you dwell in is a signal, and your biology is constantly adjusting to that signal. When you feel gratitude, for instance, your body becomes a living pharmacy of healing chemicals. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These are not abstract words. They are messengers of peace, repairing tissues, calming the nervous system, opening pathways of connection. Gratitude softens the muscles, slows the heart rate, deepens the breath. It is not just a mood. It is a physiological event that transforms you from the inside out. But when fear dominates, the story is different. Cortisol rises, adrenaline surge. The body prepares for battle even when there is no battle to fight. The muscles tighten, digestion slows. The immune system weakens. The body lives as if the world is hostile. And so, day by day, thought by thought, we are sculpting our biology according to the emotions we allow to guide us. Science has shown something remarkable. Even DNA, the deep script of who we are, responds to the environment of emotion. Genes are not as fixed as we once believed. They're like switches, turning on and off depending on the chemical environment inside the body. When you cultivate love, compassion, and gratitude, you are literally turning on genes of repair, resilience, and vitality. When you dwell in fear and anger, you activate pathways of stress and decline. This means that you are not simply thinking differently when you shift your emotions. You are becoming someone different at a biological level. Your cells, your hormones, your very expression of life begins to reflect the vibration you choose to sustain. I remember a time in my life when anxiety was constant, when every day felt like bracing for disaster. My body carried that story. I could feel it in my shoulders, in my breath, in the restless nights of shallow sleep. And yet, when I began practicing something as simple as gratitude, not as a performance, but as a quiet practice, my body began to change. My breath slowed, my sleep deepened, my energy returned. Nothing outside of me had shifted at first, but inside, my biology was rewriting itself according to the new frequency I was choosing. It may sound small, almost too small to matter, but that is where the miracle lives. The universe never asked us to leap mountains in a day. It asked us to choose one feeling, one thought, one state of being, and to allow that choice to ripple through the body until it became the new normal. Over time, those ripples carve rivers. They shape the terrain of who we are. Think of it this way. Your body is an instrument, and emotions are the notes you play. Gratitude is a soft chord that harmonizes every system, while fear is a discordant sound that sets the whole body on edge. You cannot expect your body to thrive on chaos. But if you learn to tune the instrument, if you choose to practice the notes of love, compassion, and peace, the music of your life changes. Others will hear it. We feel it, even before you speak. And perhaps this is why ancient teachers placed so much emphasis on the inner state. They knew that the body was not separate from the soul. They knew that heaven was not just a place beyond the earth, but a chemistry, a resonance that could live in your blood, your breath, your bones. So the invitation is simple, though not always easy. Notice what you are rehearsing in your body each day. Is it the tightness of fear, the rigidity of control, the exhaustion of worry, or is it the warmth of gratitude, the ease of trust, the softness of love? Whatever you practice most will become your biology. And the beauty of this is that change is always possible. At any moment, you can breathe differently. You can remember a moment of love. You can call back gratitude. And in doing so, you are not only changing your mood, you are rewriting your body, cell by cell, into a new version of yourself. This is not theory. It is lived truth. It is healing that begins not with medicine alone, but with the vibration you choose to embody. You are not powerless. You are, in fact, the composer of your own biology, and the music you write with your emotions becomes the life you live. 6. Time is not a barrier. One of the heaviest burdens we carry in this world is the belief that everything takes time. We are taught from an early age to wait for happiness, to wait for healing, to wait for success. As if life were some long corridor we must crawl through before the door finally opens. And yet, in the quantum world, time does not exist in the way we imagine it. There is no waiting room, no calendar keeping track of when you are allowed to become who you truly are. In the field of infinite possibility, every version of you already exists. The healed version, the abundant version, the peaceful version, they are not hidden in some distant future, waiting for years to pass before they appear. They are here now, vibrating just beyond the station you are currently tuned into. The only thing that separates you from them is alignment. Not time, but the mind, shaped by years of conditioning, clings to the idea of delay. It says, healing takes years. Success must be earned through decades of struggle. Love will come someday, if I work hard enough. And without realizing it, we program the very delay we fear. We create the distance ourselves. It is not the universe that holds us back. It is our own belief that time is required before we are allowed to receive. I remember years in my own life when I said to myself, one day, when I have enough money, then I'll feel safe. One day, when my health improves, then I'll be grateful. One day, when love finds me, then I'll be whole. But each one day was a postponement of life itself. Each then was a way of saying, not now, and life, ever faithful to mirror what we declare, responded, not now. The truth I eventually discovered is both simple and radical. Alignment is not measured in years. It happens in a moment. It happens in a breath. Healing is not the end of a long road. It is a choice to step into wholeness now. Abundance is not the result of a lifetime of proving yourself. It is the state you allow yourself to embody in this instant. The moment you shift your vibration, you step onto a different timeline, and reality reorganizes around you. Think of it like a television. All the channels are broadcasting at once. You don't wait for Channel 7 to begin airing. It is already there. If you are on Channel 3, you simply aren't seeing it. When you press the button, When you choose, the picture changes instantly. The broadcast doesn't need years to prepare itself. It was always available. Your choice made it visible. This doesn't mean you never grow, or that there isn't a process of unfolding. But the essence of change does not live in the passage of time. It lives in the decision to tune differently, here and now. Growth is not about waiting for the future to fix you. Growth is about aligning today, in the smallest of ways, until the version of you that once felt distant becomes the only version you know. And yet, I want to speak gently to the part of you that still fears. But what if I'm not ready? What if I need more time? I have felt that, too. Readiness is not about having everything figured out. Readiness is simply the willingness to step into resonance with the life you long for. Even if your hands still tremble, the field does not demand perfection. It only responds to coherence. So perhaps the real question is not, how long will it take, but, am I willing to embody it now? Are you willing to feel gratitude before the evidence arrives? Are you willing to soften into peace even while chaos still circles? Are you willing to love yourself as though the healing has already occurred? If you are, you will discover what I did. Time collapses. What once seemed far away begins to touch your life in ways you cannot deny. In truth, it was never about waiting. It was always about remembering. The future you dream of is not waiting for you at the end of the years. It is calling you from this very moment. And every time you choose alignment instead of delay, you close the gap. So I ask you softly, how many more years will you keep telling yourself, someday? And what would happen if, instead, you whispered, today 7, the trap of contradictory desires. One of the hardest lessons I had to face in my own journey was this: the universe does not listen to what you say. It listens to what you radiate. And so often, without realizing it, we ask for one thing with our words, while broadcasting the exact opposite with our state of being. We say we want wealth, but every time a bill arrives, our stomach tightens with fear. We say we want love, but deep down, we carry the vibration of loneliness, of unworthiness. We declare our desire for freedom, but our lives are quietly ruled by the chains of fear and doubt. It is not that life is cruel, withholding what we long for. It is simply reflecting back the frequency we are truly living in. I remember a time when I kept telling myself, I want abundance. I would write it in my journal, say it in my prayers, even speak it out loud to the mirror. And yet, beneath those words, every action was saturated with fear of not having enough. I checked my bank account 5 times a day, bracing myself for disappointment. I worried over every expense, as if money were always on the verge of disappearing. My mouth spoke abundance, but my body radiated scarcity. And the field, faithful as always, mirrored scarcity back to me. This is the trap of contradictory desires. We believe we are calling for one reality, when in truth we are feeding the energy of its opposite. It is like planting seeds of roses, while constantly pouring poison into the soil. The seeds never had a chance, not because the universe denied them, but because our vibration never nurtured them. What makes this even more challenging is that the ego loves contradiction. The ego thrives on wanting without receiving. Because it proves its story of lack, it convinces us that we must strive harder, perform more rituals, or wait longer. And in that endless striving, the ego stays alive. But the soul whispers, a simpler truth: alignment is everything. You cannot call for love while embodying loneliness. You cannot summon freedom while living as a prisoner of fear. You cannot demand wealth while breathing scarcity. And yet, this is not a reason for shame. It is an invitation for awareness, because once you see the contradiction, you can choose to soften it. You can stop asking with your lips and start embodying with your being. How do you do this? By noticing the energy behind your desires. When you say, I want love, pause and feel, Am I radiating love already? Or am I radiating loneliness? If it is loneliness, then the first step is not to chase a partner, but to begin nurturing the feeling of love within yourself. Through kindness, through gratitude, through the way you care for your own heart. When you say, I want wealth, notice, am I broadcasting gratitude and safety? Or am I vibrating fear of lack? If it is fear, then the work is not another financial strategy, but a shift in vibration, finding peace in the present, even with what little you may have. The truth is, the universe is neutral. It does not punish, and it does not reward. It simply mirrors. If your signal is mixed, your results will be mixed. If your signal is clear, your reality becomes clear. This is why alignment matters more than words, more than rituals, more than effort. I often think of it like tuning an instrument. If the strings are out of tune, it doesn't matter how beautifully you play the melody. It will sound harsh. In the same way, if your inner vibration is not in tune with what you say you want, life cannot echo the song you desire. But when you take the time to tune yourself, to align thought, feeling, and being, the music flows effortlessly. So if you find yourself frustrated, repeating affirmations, yet seeing no change, I invite you to look beneath the words. Ask yourself, what am I truly broadcasting? Because the field is always listening. Not to what I say, but to who I am being. And when who you are aligns with what you desire, contradiction dissolves, and manifestation becomes not a battle, but a natural unfolding. 8. Entanglement. The subtle bonds we create. There is a mysterious principle in quantum physics called entanglement. It tells us that when two particles have interacted, they remain connected, no matter how far apart they drift. What happens to one instantly influences the other. It's as if distance no longer matters. The bond is deeper than space, deeper than separation. What science reveals on a microscopic scale, life reflects in the way we live every day. For we, too, become entangled with what we focus on, with what we give our energy to. The threads of our attention are like invisible cords, tying us to the very realities we think about most, and so often, without realizing it, we become entangled with the very things we want to escape. We think constantly about debt and the anxiety it brings. We replay the loneliness of an empty bed, the heaviness of silence in our homes. We rehearse our failures, turning them over and over in the mind until they carve grooves in our identity. Each thought, each surge of emotion is a tightening of the cord, and the universe, faithful, neutral, unjudging, simply mirrors back the entanglement. More depth, more loneliness, more evidence that what we fear is real. I know this pattern because I have lived it. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, counting the things that had gone wrong. The more I tried to solve them in my head, the more tightly bound I felt. It was as though life itself had woven me into a web I couldn't cut free from. Only later did I realize it wasn't life holding me. It was me holding on, tying myself through attention, through focus, through obsession. Entanglement is not about desire alone. It is about where you pour your energy. And here lies the quiet power. Just as you can entangle with your problems, you can entangle with your solutions. Just as you can tie yourself to lack, you can bind yourself to abundance. Think about love. If you sit alone and continually entangle yourself with loneliness, feeling it, feeding it, replaying it, you strengthen that bond. But if you begin, even in small ways, to entangle with love, through gratitude for the connections you already have, through acts of kindness, through softening your own heart, you shift the cords. You weave yourself into a timeline where love already breathes, and life begins to answer in kind. It is the same with freedom. If all your thoughts are wrapped around fear, You entangle yourself with cages, but if you begin to dwell on trust, on expansion, on the possibility of open skies, then you entangle yourself with liberation. Slowly, the bonds change. Slowly, a new thread of reality pulls you forward. This is why awareness matters so deeply. Every time you catch yourself obsessing over what is wrong, you have a choice. You can tighten the knot, or you can gently loosen it and turn towards something different. It doesn't mean denying the problem. It doesn't mean pretending it isn't there. It means choosing not to feed it with more energy than it deserves. I often picture it this way. Imagine you are holding two ropes. One rope is tied to fear, the other to possibility. Whichever rope you grip most tightly will pull you. If you keep clutching the rope of debt, it drags you deeper into scarcity. If you keep pulling on the rope of loneliness, it drags you deeper into isolation. But if you shift your grip, if you entwine your hands with the rope of gratitude, the rope of trust, you are carried toward abundance, toward love, toward freedom. Entanglement is not destiny. It is choice. You are not trapped forever in the bonds of what has been. Every day, every moment, you can begin weaving yourself into a different thread of reality. And here is the tender truth. You don't have to untangle every knot at once. You don't have to fix the whole web overnight. You only need to begin shifting your attention, thread by thread. Each time you choose to entangle with peace instead of fear, you weaken the old bond. Each time you choose to entangle with love instead of loneliness, you weave yourself closer to the timeline where love is already alive. The universe does not punish you for being entangled with struggle. It simply reflects what you are connected to. And the moment you shift the connection, the reflection changes. So ask yourself, what am I entangled with today? Is it my wounds, my debts, my failures? Or is it my healing, my abundance, my possibilities? Because whatever you are most bound to in your inner world is what life will echo back. And when you begin to tie yourself to the reality of fullness instead of lack, the timeline of that fullness opens, and you step into it. Not someday, but now. 9. Silence, the foundation of creation. There is a sacred quality in silence that our busy world has almost forgotten. We live surrounded by noise, the noise of constant thoughts, the noise of endless information, the noise of our own fears, echoing louder than truth. The mind races, the heart grows restless, and our frequency scatters in 1,000 directions. Yet it is within silence, and only within silence, that clarity emerges. When the waters of a lake are stirred, you cannot see through to the bottom. The ripples distort the reflection. The surface trembles with confusion. But let the water grow still, and suddenly the sky is mirrored perfectly. The depths are visible. The hidden life beneath is revealed. Silence is this stillness of the soul. In it, the turbulence of the mind settles, and we can finally see into the deeper truth of who we are. In the language of quantum creation, silence is not emptiness. It is the ground of all potential. Physicists sometimes call it the zero-point field, the fertile vacuum from which all particles emerge. Mystics call it the still point, the eternal now, the womb of creation. But whatever name we use, the truth remains. Silence is the soil in which every reality begins to sprout. I remember times in my life when I was drowning in noise, not just the external kind, but the inner noise of worry and doubt. I thought if I kept thinking hard enough, if I analyzed every angle, I could control my way into peace. But the harder I tried, the louder the noise became. It wasn't until exhaustion forced me into stillness that I discovered what had been waiting all along. In a single moment of silence, the answers I had chased for years seemed to rise on their own, unforced, like blossoms opening to the sun. This is the paradox. Silence feels like nothing, and yet it holds everything. In silence, you are no longer chasing a future or replaying a past. You are standing at the threshold of the present, and the present is the only place creation truly happens. Think of music. The notes themselves are powerful, but it is the silence between them that gives the melody its shape. Without pause, without stillness, there is only chaos. The same is true in life. Our actions, our words, or désir, they matter, but without silence, they lose their coherence. It is the stillness in between that allows creation to arrange itself into harmony. Silence also strips away illusion. In the quiet, you cannot hide from yourself. You begin to notice the anxious narratives the mind has been playing, the fears you've carried without question. And though it can feel uncomfortable at first, there is a gift in that awareness. Because once you see clearly, you can choose differently. Silence reveals not to condemn, but to free. Some people resist silence because they think it is empty, that nothing is happening there. But I tell you from experience, silence is full. It is alive. It hums with possibility. It is like standing in a vast, fertile field before the seeds are planted. You may not yet see the flowers, but the soil is already pregnant with them. This is why so many spiritual traditions cherish practices of silence, whether it is meditation, prayer, or simply sitting in still awareness. They knew, long before modern science confirmed it, that silence recalibrates the body, clears the frequency, and brings us back to coherence. It is in silence that the scattered threads of our lives weave themselves back into a whole. If you find silence difficult, know that you are not alone. At first, it can feel like facing a storm. The mind rebels, throwing up thoughts louder than ever. But if you can sit gently through that storm, if you can breathe and allow it to pass, you will discover the calm beneath. It is always there, like the blue sky waiting behind the clouds. And here lies the deeper truth: you do not create from effort alone. You create from stillness. Every great insight, every true moment of inspiration, arises not from frantic thought, but from quiet awareness. It is in the silence between breaths, in the pause between heartbeats, that creation whispers its secrets. So, I invite you to treat silence not as absence, but as presence, not as emptiness, but as fullness. Each time you allow yourself to rest in it, you are stepping into the 0 point of possibility, the place where new realities are born. Silence is not the end of life's noise. It is the foundation beneath it. And when you learn to dwell there, even for a moment, you discover that all the noise was never the truth. The truth was always waiting in the stillness. 10. Micro adjustments, small shifts, big changes. One of the most liberating truths I discovered on this journey is that transformation doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to wake up tomorrow as a completely different person. You don't need to burn down your old life in order to build a new one. True change often happens in quiet, subtle ways, through micro adjustments, small shifts that seem almost invisible at first. But over time, create a life that feels unrecognizable. We tend to glorify big leaps, don't we? The sudden breakthroughs, the overnight success stories, the radical transformations. And when we don't experience those fireworks in our own lives, we feel as if we're failing. But life is not built like that. Just as a tree doesn't grow 10 feet in a day, your becoming doesn't need to be explosive to be real. It needs to be consistent. Think of it like steering a ship. If you turn the wheel just 1 degree, you won't notice much difference in the first mile. But travel long enough, and that 1 degree shift will carry you to a completely different shore. This is what micro adjustments do. They redirect your path, not through force, but through small, intentional choices that compound over time. I remember asking myself during one of the darkest seasons of my life, what would the healed version of me choose right now? Not next year, not 10 years from now, but in this very moment. Sometimes the answer was simple: to breathe instead of panic, to rest instead of push, to call a friend instead of isolating. They were small choices, almost too small to matter, or so I thought. But months later, I could see clearly those micro adjustments had changed everything. When you begin to live this way, you stop waiting for the big miracle and start becoming the miracle in tiny increments. You wake in the morning and ask, how would the abundant version of me greet this day? Maybe it means starting with gratitude instead of worry. You sit at the dinner table and ask, how would the loving version of me respond here? Maybe it means listening with more presence, speaking with more softness. These are not grand gestures. They are the everyday stitches that weave a new frequency into your life. The beauty of micro adjustments is that they take the pressure off. You don't have to leap across the canyon. You only need to take the next gentle step, and with each step, your vibration shifts a little more, until the version of you that once felt so far away becomes natural, familiar, even inévitable. And here's something I've learned. The field responds to consistency more than intensity. A single moment of alignment is powerful. Yes, but returning to alignment again and again, even imperfectly, even clumsily, is what truly reshapes reality. Just as the body changes not from one workout but from repeated practice, your energy changes not from one inspired moment, but from the micro adjustments you return to daily. At first, it might feel too simple to believe in. How can one conscious breath matter? How can choosing gratitude for a small thing shift the vastness of my reality? But I assure you, these are the seeds, and seeds never look like much in the beginning. Yet give them attention, let them take root, and they will split stone to reach the sun. This is why I often say don't underestimate the small. Every micro adjustment is a declaration to the universe. Each time you choose to embody peace instead of fear, you are telling the field, this is who I am becoming. And the field, unfailingly, responds to that signal. So if you are weary of trying to change everything at once, let this bring you comfort. You don't need to. You only need to choose differently in this moment. And then the next, and then the next. Each conscious breath, each gentle choice, is like turning the ship by 1 degree. And one day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you'll look up and realize you are no longer in the waters of your past. You are sailing in an entirely new ocean, carried there by the quiet power of micro adjustments. 11. The quantum field reflects your state, not your effort. There is a quiet but powerful truth that many of us overlook. The universe is not counting your hours of effort. It is not tallying how many times you have prayed, how many pages you have filled with affirmations, or how long you have sat in meditation. The field does not respond to the quantity of what you do. It responds to the quality of who you are being in those moments. You can meditate for 8 hours, but if every breath is heavy with desperation, if your heart is tight with the fear of not yet having what you desire, then the field is not hearing meditation. It is hearing lack, and it will reflect that lack back to you with precision, not out of cruelty, but out of neutrality. I learned this the hard way. There were days when I pushed myself into long practices, believing that more effort would prove my devotion. I sat until my legs ached, whispered affirmations until my voice was raw, filled journals with words of hope, and yet, nothing seemed to shift. My reality stayed the same, and I felt even more defeated. What I did not realize then was that beneath all of my effort, my state was unchanged. I was still radiating fear, still anchored in scarcity, still asking life to confirm my separation. It was only when I softened, when I released the belief that effort equals worth, that I began to feel the difference. A single moment of true alignment, a single breath of gratitude felt deeply, shifted more than hours of anxious striving ever could, because the field mirrors coherence, not strain. It reflects presence, not performance. Think of it this way. If you stand before a mirror wearing a mask of joy but inside your heart is aching, the reflection will not lie to you. It will show the subtle cracks, the heaviness in your eyes, the truth beneath the performance. And so it is with the quantum field. It cannot be tricked by ritual or volume of practice. It listens only to the vibration beneath. This is why so many people feel disillusioned with the practices they've been told to follow. They chant, they visualize, they strive, but the results never come. Not because these tools are wrong, but because the state fueling them is out of tune. Meditation from fear is still fear. Gratitude spoken without feeling is still emptiness. Love declared without embodiment is still longing. But here's the good news. You do not need to perfect your practice. You only need to shift your being. One breath of genuine gratitude, even if fleeting, sends a clear signal into the field. One moment of surrender, where you release the need to control, carries more weight than hours of anxious repetition. One act of kindness, offered from the fullness of your heart, radiates farther than 1,000 affirmations whispered from lack. The ego resists this truth because it wants to measure and prove. It wants to believe that the harder you work, the more you deserve. But the soul knows differently. The soul understands that the field is not a judge keeping score. It is a mirror, reflecting essence, and essence cannot be faked. I think often of the words of ancient teachers who spoke not about effort, but about being. It is done unto you as you believe, not as you beg. Be still, and know, not strive harder. And maybe their wisdom was clear. The state of your being is the prayer. The vibration you embody is the offering. So if you feel weary from trying so hard, I invite you to lay that burden down. Stop counting the hours. Stop proving your devotion. Instead, ask gently, what am I being in this moment? What is the signal I am truly sending? Because the field is not impressed by effort. It is moved by coherence. And coherence arises not from doing more, but from softening into truth. This is the paradox when you stop forcing effort. When you allow yourself to rest in the state you desire, things begin to shift. Not slowly, not begrudgingly, but often with a quiet swiftness that feels like grace, because the field has no resistance to clarity. It only mirrors what is clear. So perhaps today, instead of striving for more, you can choose to simply align. Choose gratitude, not as a task, but as a state. Choose peace, not as an idea, but as a breath. Choose love, not as a word, but as a presence. And trust that in doing so, the universe will reflect it all back. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you've become. 12. Where science and spirituality meet. There is something beautiful that happens when wisdom from different paths begins to speak the same language. For centuries, mystics, philosophers, and spiritual teachers have pointed to a truth that seemed intangible, almost putic. And now, step by step, science is beginning to describe the very same thing in its own terms. It is as if two travelers, one walking from the east and the other from the west, have finally arrived at the same mountaintop, each carrying a different map, yet describing the same view. Neville Goddard, with his timeless simplicity, invited us to live in the end. He taught that to manifest what we desire, we must embody it as though it has already come to pass, to dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to allow the emotions of completion to saturate our being until the outer world has no choice but to reflect them. For many, his words felt like poetry, something mystical, something mysterious. Years later, science began to catch up. Joe Dispenza, drawing from neuroscience and quantum physics, spoke of coherence, the synchronization between mind and heart, thought and emotion. He explained that thoughts carry an electrical signal, while emotions carry a magnetic one. Together, They form an energetic signature broadcast into the quantum field. When the mind thinks abundance but the heart beats fear, the signals cancel each other out. But when the mind and heart align, when the thought is clear and the feeling is coherent, the signal becomes powerful. Undeniable. A beacon the field responds to. And then there is Abraham Hicks, who uses the language of flow. She reminds us that when we step into ease, when we allow ourselves to feel good without resistance, we align with the stream of life itself. In flow, we stop swimming upstream and finally let the current carry us. It is not laziness. It is wisdom. It is trust. 3 teachers, 3 different expressions. Yet at the core, they are pointing to the same truth: you must become before you can have. You cannot wait for the world to deliver proof before you embody the state. You must embody the state, and then the world will deliver proof. I remember a time when this felt impossible to me. I wanted peace. But how could I feel peace when my life felt like chaos? I wanted abundance. But how could I feel wealthy when I was counting pennies? It felt dishonest, almost foolish, to try. But then I began to understand that I wasn't being asked to fake it. I was being asked to choose where I placed my awareness, to tune into the version of myself that already existed within the infinite field. Peace was not outside of me. It was a frequency I could allow, even if only for a moment. Abundance was not waiting in some far-off future. It was a state of gratitude I could touch, even with little. And here is where science comforts us. It tells us that mental rehearsal literally rewires the brain, that neurons fire and form new connections when we vividly imagine and feel a desired reality. The body begins to experience that future as if it were happening now. The chemistry changes. The biology shifts. This is not fantasy. It is physiology. What the mystics taught as faith, science now describes as neuroplasticity. In the same way, flow is not just a spiritual metaphor. It is a measurable state in which the brain enters harmony, stress hormones decrease, creativity rises, and the body regenerates. When we allow ourselves to feel good, to live in alignment with joy, we are not being careless. We are aligning with the very mechanics of life that allow us to thrive. What moves me most is how these seemingly different voices echo one another. They remind us that the universe is not complicated, whether you call it living in the end, coherence, or flow. The message is the same. Your outer world begins with your inner state. So perhaps the invitation is this: stop waiting for proof. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Choose coherence now. Live as though it is already done. Not because you are pretending, but because in the quantum field, it already exists. Step into the flow. Not because you are giving up, but because you are wise enough to know that life was never meant to be a constant battle. And when you do, something shifts. You feel it first in your body. The calm of coherence, the ease of flow, the wholeness of living in the end. Then, slowly, reality bends to match it. Science explains it. Spirituality celebrates it. But you will know it not because someone told you, but because you lived it, and life reflected it back. 13. Synchronicity, the natural response of alignment. There is a certain kind of magic that happens when you begin to live in alignment. Though it is not the kind of magic we see in stories or illusions, it is quieter, subtler, and far more profound. We call it synchronicity, the unfolding of life in ways that feel so perfectly timed, so intimately designed, that you cannot explain them away as coincidence. When your frequency steadies, when you stop oscillating between fear and trust, lack and abundance, life begins to move differently around you. You start to notice the gentle choreography of the universe, as if unseen hands are arranging the details of your life with care. The right person appears in the coffee shop line, just as you were searching for guidance. A book falls into your lap with the exact words your heart needed. An opportunity arrives at the precise moment you had given up on striving. To the rational mind, these moments feel impossible. What are the odds, we ask? But in truth, the odds are perfect, because in the quantum field, you are no longer separate from the reality you seek. The moment your vibration stabilizes, the field reorganizes itself around that signal. Synchronicity is not random luck. It is resonance made visible. I can share from my own experience. There was a season in my life when I was deeply entangled with struggle. Every door I tried to open seemed to slam shut. I called it bad luck. I told myself the world was against me. But looking back, I see that my energy was scattered, full of doubt and fear. Life was simply reflecting the chaos I carried within. Later, when I began to soften into alignment, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but with sincerity, things changed. I remember one day walking into a small bookstore. I had no plan, no reason to be there, but something drew me inside. Within minutes, I found a book that contained exactly the teaching I had been searching for, something that shifted the course of my healing. To others, it was a coincidence. To me, it was synchronicity, the field responding to the new signal I was broadcasting. The beauty of synchronicity is that it feels natural, not forced. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to plan every detail. It arrives like the tide, flowing in its own rhythm, carrying you to places you could never have arranged by logic alone. And here lies a gentle truth. Synchronicity is the universe's way of saying, I see you. I hear your frequency. I am rearranging myself to meet you. It is not about deserving. It is not about luck. It is about coherence. When you become steady in your vibration, the world becomes steady in its response. Think of it like tuning an instrument. When one string vibrates in harmony, nearby strings begin to resonate without being touched. This is how alignment works. Your vibration calls forth resonant events. People and circumstances, they begin to appear, not because they were created out of nothing, but because your steadiness allowed them to reveal themselves. This is why synchronicity often feels like a gentle surprise. It bypasses the ego, which always expects control, and reminds us that life is more intelligent than we realize. You may call it divine timing, or destiny, or simply being in the right place at the right time. But beneath all those names, the principle is the same. The field is listening, and it is faithful. If you find yourself longing for more synchronicity, the key is not to demand it, but to cultivate stability within yourself. When you stop wavering between doubt and faith, when you embody the feeling of already being supported, life mirrors that back in the form of perfect timing. And when it does, you will know, not in your mind, but in your bones, that you were never walking alone. So, the next time you encounter one of those impossible coincidences, pause and let yourself feel it fully. Don't dismiss it as chance. Recognize it as evidence of alignment. Smile at the way the universe whispers back to you, arranging its pieces in harmony with your frequency, because synchronicity is not luck. It is life reflecting the clarity of your being, remembering, not seeking. When all the ideas and practices have been stripped back, the message is so simple, it almost feels too simple to believe. Manifestation is not a journey of chasing, but of remembering. It is not about forcing life to deliver something it has been withholding. It is about realizing that nothing was ever withheld in the first place. You are not wandering through a barren land in search of a miracle. You are standing in a field already alive with infinite timelines, each one humming with possibility. The wealth you long for, the love you ache for, the healing you pray for. They are not locked away in some distant future. They are here, vibrating quietly, waiting for you to tune the dial. This is why I often say you do not make miracles. The very act of alignment is the miracle. When you shift your state, when you breathe differently, when you soften into gratitude, instead of tightening in fear, you have already stepped into a new reality. The outer evidence may take time to ripple through, but the shift itself is instantaneous. It begins in the moment you remember. So the question was never, when will it happen? That question belongs to a mind trapped in the old frequency of waiting, measuring, delaying. The real question is, am I aligned right now? Because when you are, the field responds immediately. The synchronicities appear, the unexpected doors open. The right people arrive, not because you forced them, but because you finally resonated with them. I remember the years I spent asking, when will I be free? When will abundance come? When will I finally feel whole? Each when was another way of postponing the truth. Each when was me declaring, not yet. And the universe, faithful as ever, simply mirrored my words, not yet. But the moment I stopped asking when and began asking how am I being, everything shifted. Instead of waiting to be abundant, I chose to feel gratitude for the smallest things I had. Instead of waiting for love, I softened into love for myself, for strangers, for the simplest presence of life itself. Instead of waiting for peace, I allowed myself to sit in silence and breathe as though peace were already mine. And life, without hesitation, began to echo it back. This is the heart of it. Manifestation is not learning a new skill. It is remembering an old truth. It is remembering that reality has always been listening, always reflecting, always responding, not to your effort, not to your begging, but to your being. So, my friend, if you take nothing else from this, let it be this. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not unworthy. You are already woven into the fabric of the quantum field. And the frequency you choose to embody is shaping your world even now. Instead of striving, allow. Instead of demanding, become. Instead of asking, when will life change? Whisper gently, am I aligned yet? That one question, lived sincerely, will change everything. And as you live this way, you will notice something subtle but profound. You stop chasing the miracle and begin embodying it. You stop waiting for life to deliver. And you begin to see that life was always delivering, always listening, always reflecting. The miracle is not outside of you. It is you, aligned, coherent, present. So let us end here. In the simplicity of this truth, you never really learned how to manifest. You are only remembering that reality listens not to your words but to your song. Remembering that alignment itself is the miracle. Remembering that in every moment, the universe is waiting to echo the frequency you choose. And once you know this, truly know it in your bones, you no longer ask. When you no longer wait at the door, you step into the room. You take your place in the timeline that was always yours. And the universe, like a faithful mirror, smiles back and says, yes, I hear you now.